Let's just jump right in. Today's explainer unpacks a truly raw, powerful manifesto on emotional boundaries, broken trust, and what letting go actually means. We're looking at some source material today that completely dissects how a profound connection dissolves. And it's not about those fiery, dramatic breakups you see in the movies. Instead, it's this incredibly clinical, fascinating look at what we're calling the architecture of detachment. Like, how in the world do we go from being entirely invested in someone to feeling absolutely nothing at all? Well, together, we're going to explore that psychological shift that happens when hard boundaries are finally drawn, and we'll see exactly how this material maps out such a universal human experience.
Right off the bat, this perfectly captures that agonizing phase where we just completely exhaust ourselves trying to save a failing connection. Think about that metaphor for a second. Painting red flags white. The material points out that when we're deeply attached, we willingly go blind. We see the warnings, right? We see the incompatible behaviors. But because we so desperately want to keep that person in our picture, we do the massive emotional labor of camouflaging their flaws. We're essentially covering up the danger signs with a blank canvas of our own hope. But, as we're going to see, that kind of emotional cover-up, it is entirely unsustainable.
Which brings us to Section 1, when the respect dies, the cascade of emotional decay.
So this unraveling, it is not random. It's a specific, totally unavoidable sequence, outlined with brutal clarity. See, it doesn't actually start with the loss of love. It starts with the loss of respect. Once that core foundational pillar falls, it triggers a chain reaction. Without respect, the emotional and physical attraction simply dies. Without attraction, the love you once felt just fades into the background. And then we hit that chilling final step. You just become ordinary to them. That person who used to be the absolute center of your universe suddenly holds no more weight than a random stranger passing you on the street. Crazy, right?
And that brings us to the jarring psychological reality of looking at someone after that love has faded. The version of the person you loved, they're dead. They just don't exist anymore. So when you look at them now, you're literally looking at a stranger who just happens to have a familiar face. It triggers this intense cognitive dissonance, Your brain recognizes their physical features, but your mind realizes the character behind those features is completely unrecognizable. It is such a surreal, deeply unsettling experience.
Moving right along to Section 2, painting red flags white, the absolute exhaustion of giving chances.
In these situations, trust isn't permanently broken out of bitterness. It's broken out of pure logic. You realize this person possesses what's called a fluid character. So what does that actually mean? It means their values, their promises, their actions, they aren't anchored by any sort of integrity. Instead, they shift and morph entirely based on what is convenient for them in any given moment. And you simply cannot build a solid foundation on a target that's constantly moving. It makes giving second chances utterly exhausting, because you're trying to hold someone to a standard they'll just abandon the second it doesn't serve them.
Now here is the definitive turning point, from passion to apathy. The really tragic irony here is that the very person who was completely committed, completely all in, was systematically trained to stop caring by the other person's actions. Indifference isn't usually a natural state for someone who loves deeply, right? It's a learned behavior. It's the final defense mechanism that kicks in after you've been shown time and time again that doing the right thing just won't be reciprocated.
Let's look at Section 3, the economy of emotion. Why hate is just too expensive.
We usually think of hate as the total opposite of love, right? But the source frames it so differently. Hate is a deeply expensive emotional currency. It takes a massive amount of passion. When you hate someone, you are actively spending your time, your thoughts, and your energetic resources on them. You're basically making a daily investment into a total void that is never, ever going to give you a return.
And because of that, hating someone actually keeps you energetically attached to them. They're still taking up prime real estate in your mind. To truly detach, you can't just transition from love to hate. You've got to transition to absolute zero. You literally have to stop funding the connection altogether.
My bank is closed. I mean, what an ultimate statement of self-respect. It's shutting off the emotional funding completely. It means there's no more passion left to give. Not for love, definitely not for second chances, and absolutely not for hate. The energetic currency is run out, the accounts are frozen, and the transaction window is permanently shut. It's such a brilliant, definitive way of taking your power back.
See, true indifference doesn't look like malice. You don't want them to be in pain. Actually, you might even hope they win. You might hope they finally grow into the person they pretended to be at the start of the relationship. But there's one massive, non-negotiable condition here. They have to do it far, far away from your peace.
That's what it really means to be evicted from someone's energy. You aren't wishing them harm, you just require them to exist completely outside of your universe.
This brings us to Section 4. Forgiveness is not re-entry. Canceling the debt without opening the door.
So, society often tells us, that true forgiveness means you have to let someone back into your life. Well, this material violently rejects that notion. We have to rigidly separate letting go of our past from granting access to our future. Forgiveness is simply canceling the debt. It means looking at what they owe you, the apologies, the closure, the changed behavior, and deciding you're just done trying to collect on it. You wipe the ledger clean, but you do it for your own sanity. But listen closely. Canceling the debt does not mean granting re-entry. You can completely forgive someone while simultaneously making absolutely sure they never have access to you again.
Because you are officially evicted. This is the stark finality of the boundary being set. There's no negotiation happening here, no arguing back and forth. The eviction is official. It's such a heavy contrast to that earlier emotional turbulence, right? All that exhausting work of painting red flags white. Now, it's just the simple, quiet enforcement of a standard.
And notice that there's zero dramatic destruction necessary to move on here. We're always hearing about burning bridges, which always implies anger and flames and this chaotic severing of ties. But the source provides a much more mature, genuinely peaceful alternative. The bridge isn't burned, there's no bad blood, the structure is still standing there, acknowledging the history that actually existed. It's just closed, access denied. You don't need a fiery explosion to protect your peace, you just need a sturdy roadblock.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final question to chew on regarding the boundaries and bridges in your own life. The source material ends with the realization that the speaker simply stopped walking down paths that lead to nowhere. I mean, it takes immense clarity to recognize when a relationship, a dynamic, or an emotional investment has just become a total dead end. So take a hard look at your own map today. Are you still out there painting red flags white? Are you investing your expensive emotional currency into someone who is just bankrupting your peace? Think deeply about which bridges you might need to quietly but firmly close.